This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Oteli Edwards. Tonight's top stories. Shanghai paralyzed as Typhoon Bebinca strikes with full force, lashing the region with powerful winds. Thousands of trees uprooted, hundreds of thousands evacuated, but only one injury reported so far. Now, the first conviction under Hong Kong's new national security law. A 27-year-old protester faces years in jail for wearing a T-shirt with a banned slogan. The Philippines vows to maintain a presence at the disputed Sabina Shoal, stressing that the withdrawal of a vessel after a months-long standoff with China was for medical reasons and to repair damage. A strike at Samsung Electronics' India plant escalates after police detain more than 100 workers protesting against low wages. Also this hour in East Asia Tonight, China's plan to raise the retirement age sparks anger among young job seekers. The timing of the labor market reform comes at a difficult period for the slowing economy. And the cast and crew of historical epic Shogun celebrate as it sweeps 18 awards, including the prestigious Best Drama Trophy at this year's Emmys. Well, Shanghai has faced its most powerful storm in 75 years after Typhoon Bebinca slammed into the financial hub. Well, the Category 1 storm made landfall this morning, packing top wind speeds of up to 151 kilometers per hour. Well, state media has reported only one injury as a result of the typhoon so far. Now, the normally bustling city was at a standstill after residents in Shanghai took shelter to wait out the worst of the storm. Strong winds felled more than 10,000 trees across Shanghai, while more than 400,000 people were evacuated from the typhoon's path. More than 60,000 emergency responders and firefighters have been deployed to assist in rescue efforts. Typhoon Bebinca also disrupted the travel plans of those on the move over the 3-day Mid-Autumn Festival holiday in China.
现在走在台湾呢，就是那风吹了，走路稍微有一点困难嘛，但是不至于完全走不了。然后就是有点小心路上可能吹点风，树枝之类的东西，小心被砸到而已。
Well, the eye of the storm, meanwhile, has crossed from Shanghai to neighboring Jiangsu province. Rain is expected to continue in China's financial capital. Shanghai, home to 25 million people, is rarely subject to direct hits from strong typhoons that generally make landfall further south of the country. And for more, CNA's Tan Yuguan, he joins us live now from Shanghai. Yuguan, fortunately, no deaths reported, but still, it is the strongest storm that hit Shanghai in 75 years. How is the city holding up?
Well, the city did come to a standstill earlier, but it has pretty much reawakened. While there are still fallen leaves and broken branches on the streets, people have come back to the streets. Traffic have resumed. Earlier, during the height of the storm, most people did stay home, as you mentioned, and that was, of course, made possible by the fact that nobody had to work because today is, well, at least most people did not have to work because today is the second day of the 3-day Mid-Autumn Festival. In fact, even delivery services, which is usually the lifeblood of Shanghai, you always see delivery people zooming past you on the streets. Today, there was a rare exception where all such services were also shut down as the typhoon passed. Now, both airports were also closed, as well as rail services that were running near the coast. However, that said, all these services, the transportation services, the airports, have all resumed since this afternoon. Oteli?
Good to know. But Yuguan, I do understand that when Bebinca was passing through Shanghai, there were some rather scary scenes in parts of the city. If you could just tell us more about that.
Yes, given the scale of this typhoon, of course, there were some unavoidable scenes of trees with their branches falling off, or even whole trees being uprooted, falling on cars, for example. But there are also other clips showing scenes that perhaps could have been avoided. This include one scene at a suburban mall where a lottery shop or lottery stand, quite a huge one for that was not secured properly, that was blown across the plaza. And then there was also, what's most disturbing, there were also cladding that were falling off tall apartment blocks. In one case, this happened in the middle of one of Shanghai's busiest shopping streets. Please take a look.
我们在淮海中路地铁站门口，这边导出了大量的。Wow.
Now, scenes like this have made people question the quality of the construction, for many of these buildings have not withstood a typhoon of this strength today. Shanghai isn't often directly hit by a typhoon, as you mentioned earlier. In fact, 2 years ago, when a typhoon was almost threatening to hit it directly, it actually went about 300 kilometers off target. Tally?
Yeah, well, certainly very scary scenes there. Unfortunately, no one was killed, from the storm. But I believe based on latest updates, the storm is moving inland. The eye of the storm now in Jiangsu province. Any idea how authorities there are preparing for Bebinca?
Well, actually, Bebinca hit Jiangsu province earlier. It probably is already passing right past through the province. It weakened to about 20 kilometers per hour. That's quite a lot weaker than it was earlier when it passed through Shanghai, and is weakening rather fast as it passes through inland. Now, ahead of the storm, authorities have shut down all ground and elevated MRT lines as well as other rail services in cities like Nanjing, Suzhou, and Wuxi. Multiple bridges crossing the mighty Yangtze have also implemented control measures. Now, these include outright closure as well as reduced speeds, or the barring of huge buses as well as trucks that were transporting hazardous chemicals. In all, I think Jiangsu should survive this typhoon, like Shanghai, relatively unscathed.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Not too pleasant that it's happening right, in the middle of the Mid-Autumn Festival. But thanks so very much, Tan Yu-Guan, for reporting to us live from Shanghai. Now, turning our attention to other news now, Hong Kong has made its first conviction under its new national security law. A 27-year-old Chu Kai-pong pleaded guilty to sedition for wearing a T-shirt with a protest slogan and could be sentenced to several years in jail. And he was arrested on the 12th of June for wearing a T-shirt and yellow mask with slogans frequently chanted during the massive pro-democracy protests in 2019. Chu told police the outfit was to remind the public of the protests. Chu had already served a 3-month stint in prison for a separate sedition charge in January. He will be sentenced on Thursday. Hong Kong passed its new security law known as Article 23 in March this year, after Beijing imposed on the city the national security law back in 2020. Now, under this new law, the maximum prison sentence for sedition has been expanded to 7 years, up from 2. More than 300 people have been arrested under the two security laws as of last month. The Philippines says it has not given up the disputed Sabina Shoal in the South China Sea, 2 days after it pulled out a ship from the contested waters. Well, the vessel, a BRP Teresa Macbanoa, had been anchored in the area for the previous 5 months to monitor possible reclamation activities by Beijing. Well, that's according to the Philippines National Security Council. The Philippine Coast Guard stresses that the withdrawal of the ship is not a defeat, disputing suggestions the Coast Guard was abandoning their post at the shoal. Manila cites humanitarian reasons for the pullout, saying they have to address the medical needs of dozens of crew members and to repair the vessel. It adds that an immediate replacement will be in the shoal to continue the Philippines' presence in the region, though officials refuse to say if the new ship has been deployed or what vessel it may be. Beijing views Manila's presence in the area as an intrusion upon China's sovereignty. It had previously demanded the Philippines withdraw the Teresa Macbanoa vessel that it deemed illegal, adding that Beijing will continue to carry out law enforcement activities in the waters to safeguard its maritime interest. Now, Chinese vessels had collided with the ship multiple times since its anchoring in April, with one incident resulting in structural damage. A fishing boat capsized in waters off South Korea's west coast earlier this morning. Though the Coast Guard rescued all 8 people, 3 died after being taken to the hospital. Local news agency Yonhap said that the fatalities included 2 South Koreans and 1 Indonesian. A 35-ton fishing boat overturned near Gunsan City in North Jeolla province, more than 100 kilometers away from the capital, Seoul. The Coast Guard hasn't identified what caused the accident, but they are investigating the possibility that the fishing vessel may have collided with a tanker, which was carrying some 1,600 tons of petroleum products near the time of the accident. The South Korean authorities say a North Korean trash-carrying balloon reportedly sparked fire on a building rooftop in the capital, Seoul. The city's Gangso fire station says that the incident occurred at around 9 p.m. local time yesterday in the city's western district. At least 56 personnel and 15 fire trucks were deployed as firefighters rushed to extinguish the blaze. No casualties were reported. South Korea's military says that Pyongyang launched 170 trash-filled balloons over the weekend, adding that around 40 of those balloons have reached the south, landing mainly in northern Gyeonggi province and the capital. Seoul says that the bags attached to those balloons contained mostly paper and plastic waste and posed no safety risk to the public. But officials warn timer devices found on some of Pyongyang's trash-carrying balloons could still cause fire. Earlier this month, there were 2 separate accounts of a blaze occurring near an airport and another at a storage unit in the south. The 2 Koreas have been locked in a tit-for-tat campaign since May, with the north sending more than 5,000 trash-filled balloons to the south. Pyongyang insisting its campaign is in retaliation for propaganda balloons launched by South Korean activists. North Korea's parliament is set to convene a session that would likely pass a constitutional amendment to declare South Korea as the country's primary foe. State media reported that the session of the North Korean Supreme People's Assembly will be held on October 8th. The last session was in January, when leader Kim Jong-un called for the amendment to view South Korea as the primary enemy. At that time, Mr. Kim said that he had concluded that unification with the South was no longer possible. The development comes as analysts say recent photos of North Korea's uranium enrichment facility may show an undeclared site for building nuclear bombs just outside of its capital. Experts say that the site, known as Gangson, is suspected to be a covert uranium enrichment plant. North Korea media KCNA had said that Mr. Kim stressed the need to increase the number of centrifuges to produce more material for nuclear bombs during the inspection. Right, time now for a short break, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, Taiwan's financial watchdog says it will rule on a controversial takeover battle for the island's 5th largest financial holding firm next week. And a strike at Samsung Electronics' India plant escalates after police detain more than 100 workers fighting for higher pay. Hello again. Glad you're spending your Monday evening with us on East Asia Tonight. You are just in time for business news with Roland Lim. And Roland Lim, it's all about China again. Another set of weak economic data?
I'm afraid so. Announced over the weekend, it was a very disappointing set of August data. Now, these have included fueling hopes that Beijing will actually step up stimulus in the final months of the year. Official figures, showed that Chinese factory output, retail sales and investment all slowed more than forecast last month. The jobless rate unexpectedly rose to a 6-month high. Home prices too declined from the previous month. Officials have blamed both internal and external factors for the lackluster economic performance.
刚刚过去的8月份，国内外的环境更加复杂严峻。同时呢，高温天气和暴雨洪涝等自然灾害又持续对经济活动造成影响。那么，面对困难挑战，各地区各部门深入贯彻落实党中央、国务院的决策部署，宏观政策的成效继续显现。
For more assessment on the data, Gary Ng, senior economist at Natixis, joins us live from Hong Kong. Gary, good to have you with us as always. Now, with the lackluster August data, some analysts pointing the growing risk that third quarter growth could also come below 5% as well. What's your view on this, and how does this actually bode for China's ability to meet its annual growth target of around 5%?
Well, I think it's highly likely that China may not achieve 5% in Q3 simply because most of the data points that we have seen basically reflect that the structural problems are still here. The confidence of consumers and businesses remain rather weak. This is why we see an ongoing deceleration, not only about year over year, but on the year over year, year to date basis that it is decelerating in investment and consumption. Well, there's some stabilization in terms of the decline in property investment and also industrial production, but that doesn't really solve the fact that the problems that China face in overcapacity and the real estate, crisis right now. So yeah, I think things are still not very stable. It's possible to see growth rate further decelerating unless we really see a much stronger fiscal and monetary support from the government.
Speaking of fiscal support, the markets have been hoping that authorities would push out more aggressive stimulus measures every time economic data misses the mark. Now, are those hopes misplaced?
Well, I think it comes to the expectation on what the government thinks, whether the economy is stable versus what the market really expect. And if the market really expect a very big stimulus, as in the past, that will basically support China's growth rate all the way to about 5%, I think it's most likely to get a disappointment. Well, however, if we continue to see this deceleration towards a tipping point that, well, maybe China cannot really meet it around 5% target, then we will likely see more support. And I think it's more the support for stabilization only. For example, we have seen more actions in the real estate market. I mean, it's probably some actions trying to stabilize the market, but it doesn't really want to, use it as the period's growth driver again. So yeah, I think it's a question of, what to expect.
Should investors also, following up on that question, should investors also instead be prepared for a scenario that Beijing can live without meeting its growth target? What would that mean for those investing in China then?
Well, I think if we look at the equity market, it basically tells you everything. And especially even though the economic growth seems to be doing rather okay in the past 2 to 3 years, but we are talking about, a net income decline for 2 consecutive years in 2022 and 2023. And there's only very minor improvement this year. So, of course, for investors, I think this sort of result is not enough to convince them to bring the money back to China or basically, divest a bit from Japan, India, which they have been powering into. The reasons are simply not strong enough. And I think this is also why we see more money getting into the bond market, because cyclically, China economic growth seems to be weakening, and structurally, there are also aging and different problems that will force China to lower rates further. So it seems that if we do not see any intervention, bond seems to be the #1 investment for anyone who wants to invest China so far.
Gary, the jobless rate unexpectedly rose to a 6-month high. What are your views on China's unemployment rate for the rest of the year?
Well, I think the challenge remains there. And the problem we see right now is that a lot of traditional industry, they may have adopted more, industrial upgrade and more optimization. So basically, a lot of industry, they don't require that many labor versus the past. And together with what we see recently in the raising retirement age in China, it basically means that it will get tougher for the youth population in China going forward. So I think for most employees, if they are actually in a safe position in state-owned companies, there won't be too many problems. But this divergence versus the youth will actually widen. This is probably a problem that the government will increasingly think is problematic, that deserve more attention.
So youth unemployment, a major drag, the other being the property sector. Despite a slate of rescue measures, the property sector remains a huge drag on the economy. New home prices in major cities dropped around 5%. What more can authorities do to end this ongoing slump, do you think?
I think the most important point here is really how to revive the confidence of household. So basically, how to encourage home buyers to buy new homes right now. And I think the most direct, policy is really about how to create this positive cycle of the wealth effect and increase the disposable income of residents again. I think this is really something that is missing from China in the past 5 years, which has further dragged down the confidence. And beyond that, there are a lot of problems about households not knowing whether they would receive their home or not, even if they make the purchase right now. So providing adequate liquidity to some of the developers, or even using part of the government money to actually purchase some of this unit, may be some of the solutions to at least stabilize the market. But again, at the end of the day, it depends on whether residents want to buy home, and they will need high income to make that happen.
Gary will be surely watching what the authorities do next. Thank you very much for those insights. That was Gary Ng. He is senior economist at Natixis, speaking to us live from Hong Kong. Now, China's disappointing economic data didn't dent sentiment as traders weigh on what it would take for authorities to hand down forceful policy measures. Mainland Chinese markets closed for a 2-day holiday, so Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is getting its first bite at reaction to the weak reports. Hang Seng inching up 0.3%, reversing earlier losses. Property developers there leading the gainers. Now, no reference rate was set for the onshore CNH or CNY today because of the holidays, but offshore trading of the renminbi continues. It is relatively unchanged, 710 to $1. Taiwan weighted index closing out the day 0.42% higher. The yen has been strengthening ahead of the expected rate cut from the Federal Reserve. The Japanese yen hit 139.58 to the greenback. That is its strongest since July of 2023. It is currently changing hands, 140.14 to $1, and it's up about, 0.5% against the dollar. Economists are unanimous in predicting no change to Japan's interest rates when the central bank meets on Friday. But how the Bank of Japan governor characterizes the trajectory could jolt the currency, which has already outperformed its peers so far this month. Stock markets in Japan and South Korea close for a public holiday. Taiwan's regulator will decide on a controversial takeover battle for the island's 5th largest financial holding firm next week. The Financial Supervisory Commission will rule on the 24th of September on CTBC's Financial's $4 billion offer to acquire smaller rival Xinguang. Now, CTBC's move triggered a rival bid from another financial group, Typhoon, which last week raised its offer for Xinguang by 25% to $7 billion. Victoria Jen has more.
The battle for control of Xinguang involves two of Taiwan's most prominent families, the Wus and the Kus. The major shareholders of Xinguang and Taixing are brothers from the Wu family. It's no surprise that Xinguang has said it viewed Taixing as the preferred bidder. With its operations across banking, securities, life and property insurance, merging with Taixing will create the 4th largest financial holding firm in Taiwan. The much higher bid by Taixing, which is smaller in size when compared to both Xinguang and rival bidder CTBC, has been seen as an effort to fend off the acquisition proposal from Jeffrey Koo Jr.'s CTBC. Mr. Koo, the scion of the prominent Koo family, aims to create the island's largest financial holding firm with his proposal to acquire Xinguang. Analysts say that either way, the merger would be a positive step for Taiwan's financial industry. They say the sector tends to be more domestically focused, and the merger could increase the international competitiveness of Taiwan's financial entities. Victoria Jen, CNA, Taipei.
Indian police have detained around 100 striking workers and union leaders protesting for low wages at a Samsung electronics plant in southern India. Police say they were planning to march today without permission. Now, the detention marks an escalation of a strike by workers at a Samsung home appliance plant near Chennai city in the state of Tamil Nadu. India's powerful labor group, that's the Centre of Indian Trade Unions, is backing the protests. The strike has also cast doubt on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's plans to boost foreign investment and significantly expand India's electronics manufacturing industry. Now, workers want higher wages and have boycotted work for 7 days. Hundreds of workers have been staging protests at the plant for a week now. And the plant accounts for nearly a third of Samsung's $12 billion in annual revenue from India. And that'll do it for business. It's back to you, Telly.
Thanks so very much, Roland, for the business report. Well, coming up next on East Asia Tonight, China's plan to gradually raise its retirement age is sparking anger on some fronts. What are the implications for the country's economy and social fabric? Well, we'll speak to an expert in just a moment. And a glimpse into the lives of war survivors in South Korea, still waiting to reunite with their loved ones. Typhoon Bebinca slams into China's east coast, bringing the mega-city of Shanghai to a standstill. It's the strongest typhoon to hit the financial hub in more than 7 decades, downing trees, causing power outages and disrupting transport services. Hong Kong makes its first conviction under its new national security law. A 27-year-old protester pleads guilty to wearing a T-shirt with a banned slogan and could face several years in prison. Manila stands its ground, pledging to maintain its presence at the contested Sabina Shoal in the South China Sea. It earlier recalled a Coast Guard vessel stationed there following a months-long standoff with Beijing. Japan today marks its Respect for the Aged Day, a public holiday designated to honor its senior citizens. And this comes as the government says that the country's elderly population has hit a record high. Our data shows that the number of people aged 65 and above has reached 36.25 million. That's up 20,000 from a year ago. They now make up nearly 30% of the total population, a figure that's also at a record high. Japan has the world's fastest growing society. The demographic crisis is prompting concerns over medical and welfare costs in the world's 4th biggest economy, with a shrinking labor force increasingly pressured to pay for it. But a good number of its elderly still working. The survey shows that 1 in 4 people, for those over 65 years old, have jobs. Well, Tokyo has for years attempted to slow the decline and aging of its population, but to limited success so far. In neighboring South Korea and China, the proportion of elderly residents stand at about 19% and nearly 15%, respectively. But China is increasingly facing similar concerns as its population ages, while the world's 2nd biggest economy wants to raise its retirement age to cope with a shrinking workforce, and is reportedly doing so for the first time since the 1950s. While Beijing's move is likely to slow the decline in the labor force, it has drawn ire among some Chinese citizens who point to a sluggish job market and stigma against older candidates. The retirement age for men will rise to 63 years old from 60. For female blue-collar workers and cadres, the retirement age will be increased to 55 and 58 years respectively. Now, that's from 50 and 55 currently. The change will take place gradually over 15 years starting from January. The reform comes as the country battles economic headwinds and pressure from an aging population, while local governments face pension budget deficits. China's retirement ages are among the lowest globally, despite a significantly higher life expectancy. A bigger tax base, along with delayed access to benefits, will likely relieve the pressure on the country's pension system. Well, to help us break it all down, we have with us Dr. Xiu Jianpeng, Senior Research Fellow, Victoria University in Melbourne. Well, thanks, Dr. Peng, for joining us today. First up, we talk about China's retirement age. We said it has remained unchanged since the 1950s. But in terms of raising the retirement age, it's not new. It's been talked about in the last decade. But what exactly drove the decision to finally increase it now?
Yeah, I think the reason why after so many years, our government now finally decided to take action to raise the retirement age. I think the one main reason is China's population declined as much earlier than the government expected. So everyone knows China's population began to decline in 2022, and then last year, 2023, the 2nd year decline as well. And in the future, to the rest of the century, the population will continue to decline. And this decline happened much earlier than the government expected. Previous government expected maybe the population will begin to decline maybe around 2028 or now someone or also think maybe 2030. But actually this is not true and is actually much earlier than government expected. With a much early population decline, this means we have the faster population aging and the higher pressure on the pension account, and also we have a faster decline of labor force. That's why the government have to take action now.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, Dr. Peng, but I just want to get down into one of the specific details in terms of the different retirement age increases. So the difference between female white-collar and the blue-collar workers. I mean, what factors justify that?
Yeah, I think because in the past, the original retirement age for men is 60 years old, but for women, blue collar, like you said, is 50 years old. So and also for the women work officers is 55. So because they at the beginning, this is the age retirement age is different. So now you cannot suddenly increase everyone's retirement age to the same level. So that's why they have the different level of the increase. But for the because for the blue collar women and they is starting from 50 and now increase 5 years to 55. But for the female worker officers and start from 55 increase only 3 years to 58 because the blue workers the retirement age the original retirement is too low. It's only 50 years old. Yeah, that's why every different category, different labors, we have a different as a government have a different way to increase their retirement age. Slow and steady.
So, Dr. Peng, slow and steady, yes, I get that. There's another thing that I would like to clarify as well, because the retirement age is different for men and women, right? So, but according to the Lancet, for instance, women in China, they generally live longer than men by about 4 years. Yet the men's retirement age is higher. Can you just help us understand why?
Yeah, I think in general, it's not only China we have the women live longer, but in the world, generally women live longer than men. This is a general, general phenomenon around the world. Yeah, this is not only China.
Okay, well, something that we'll definitely look into. But with this retirement age increase, we talked about there's a lot of concern, a fair bit of anger on social media, as you can see, about age discrimination in the job market, about how it's a sluggish market. So the government talked about following through its promise to tackle this issue, but how exactly are they going to be doing that?
Yeah, I think currently we have the sluggish employment market, but actually increase the retirement age. In the short term, maybe the young people think maybe it's not good for them, but actually in the longer term is benefit everyone. Is all the country will benefit. Why we think that? Because now we have the declining labor force. If the government increase the retirement age, and then this will have more labor force in the market, and that means the labor cost. This will reduce the labor cost increase. If the labor cost increase slower, then this means more. As a factory and as a companies, they like to increase more people, hire more people. This will create more job opportunities. So it's benefit for the young people. So, and this is one thing. And another is because, China, the pension account come from the pay-as-you-go system, means all the people get this pension income, the old people get pension income come from the younger generation. They generate this income and then the older people get this from the younger generation. But if the people work longer, and that means the burden to the young generation will become less. And this is a help everyone. So that's why I think, is in the short term, maybe someone maybe not happy with this policy, but actually it will benefit for everyone, not only young people, but also older people. So it's generally benefit for everyone in the longer term.
So, Dr. Peng, you sound optimistic about this measure to, increase the retirement age. But in terms of with that, is it going to lead to higher taxes or social security contributions? And if so, how exactly is this going to impact China's economic competitiveness?
I do not think this will, now white government like to increase the retirement age because, we have this a lot of promise now this pension account is already run deficit. So you see, this is a high pressure for the government. So where this money will come from? This will come from increase the tax. Increase the tax means a heavy burden for the company and also for the working age population. But if we increase the retirement age, then more people will contribute. People will stay longer in the labor force and contribute more to the pension account. In that case, then the government have the opportunity to reduce the tax on the company and on everyone. So that means that government have more money to use to stimulate the economic growth. So it's not. I do not think this is actual burden. Actually, it will ease everyone's burden. This is I think this is the original reason and also fundamental reason why the government have to do this.
Right, so we've talked about how that's going to impact, the economy domestically, but globally, as we all know, China's economy is deeply integrated into its global supply chains. So what are the sort of potential ripple effects do you think this age increase of retirement will have on international trade, investment, and economic growth?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. That's why, as China, when they raising the government retirement policy, I think they draw a lot of attention around the world. I think if China raising the retirement age, as we said before, this will increase a little bit more labor force in the labor supply in the labor market and will reduce the slow down the increase of labor costs. That's why we said we will. We will increase the economic growth. Increase the economic growth. So if China's economic grow a little bit faster, and this will benefit the all the trading partners, because China is the second largest world economy. If China's economy recover much faster than what we expected, then this means is everyone around China and also China's trading partners also get benefit from this recovery. So that's why I think it's a good thing for everyone.
All right, many thanks for your insights, Dr. Xiu Jianpeng, a Senior Research Fellow, Victoria University. South Korea on Sunday marked the day of separated families torn apart when the Korean War halted, with the two Koreas divided more than 7 decades ago. Well, state-arranged reunions to briefly bring some of these families together have stopped since 2018 due to cross-border tensions, leaving many elderly Koreans still waiting to meet their loved ones. Well, CNA's senior Korea correspondent Lim Yun-suk has more.
Kim Sang-ho remembers telling his mother when he was 18 years old and living in North Korea that he had to go for military training. He promised he would be back home soon. But he hasn't been able to keep that promise, and now, at the age of 92, he knows he never will. They separated just before the Korean War broke out in 1950.
키는 보통 키고 어머니는 상당히 열성적이요. 아버지도 돌아갔었으니까 이젠 상당히 애를 썼는데 어머니는 보고 싶었는데 이젠 볼 수도 없지. 다 이제 여기서 죽으면 그때 나가서 만날는지 모르겠지만은.
He also left behind 2 brothers and 2 sisters and does not know if they are alive or dead. Mr. Kim says the Korean War broke out while he was doing military training, leaving him no choice but to join the North Korean People's Army. He was sent to Pyongyang and later to Kaesong, where he served as a sentry. During the war, he found himself stranded, and wanting to survive, he eventually ended up fighting his comrades in the north as a South Korean soldier. When the war ended, with the 2 Koreas divided, there was no chance he could go back home to Pyeongbuk-do, a province located in the west of North Korea.
고향에는 가보고 싶은 생각이 있죠. 그래서 내가 이제 딴 데처럼 관광을 가서라도 고향이라고 한번 가봐야 되는데 가서 누구 친히 만날 사람이 나하고 친한 사람들은 다 죽었어.
All alone in the south, he worked tirelessly to survive. He married, had 2 sons, and now lives in Hwacheon, just a few kilometers south of the North Korean border. Because of its location, many of the 25,000 residents here are soldiers and family members. With no cross-border contact and communication allowed, the rare reunion events are the only times when the families get to meet. But only the lucky ones. 21 reunions have been held since the first in the year 2000. Out of more than 132,000 South Koreans who signed up for a chance to meet their families, only about 40,000 are still alive. To most South Koreans, getting a glimpse of life on the other side of the border is an intriguing event. Here in Hwacheon, a cable car service opened in late 2022, allowing South Koreans to enter a restricted area near the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas.
올라가서 보면은 또 그 마음이 또 분단된 아픔도 생각도 나고.
한 번쯤은 우리나라가 아닌 그쪽에 있는 그 마을을 어떻게 지어졌나 뭐 이렇게 궁금하잖아요. 그래서 좀 멀리라도 이렇게 뭐라도 이렇게 좀 볼 수 있을까 했는데 안 봤어요, 못 봤어요.
Hwacheon Mayor Choi Moon-soon says South Korean visitors often feel deeply affected by the view across the border.
대한민국 사람들이 남북한 통일을 가장 염원하잖아요. 그리고 좀 가깝지만 멀게 느껴지는 게 북한 아닙니까? 그래서 그걸 최접근해서 북한을 바라보면서 대한민국의 남북 통일을 염원하고 그런 마음을 한번 생각하시면 가슴이 뭉클하실 겁니다.
The cable car passes through the so-called civilian control line, an additional buffer zone to the demilitarized zone dividing the two Koreas. About 1,000 South Koreans ride the cable car every month to reach Paegamsan Mountain and take in the views. Unfortunately, I can't see North Korea from here today, but on a clear day, you should be able to see North Korea's Innam-dam, which is about 17 kilometers away from where I'm standing, and also North Korea's Mount Kumgang, which is about 53 kilometers away from where this cable car service is. It's a stark reminder for families with their loved ones on that side of the border of how close and yet how far the two Koreas are, even after more than 7 decades have passed since the end of the Korean conflict. Lim Yan-suk, CNA, Hwacheon, Gangwon Province, South Korea.
Well, here's what's coming up next on East Asia tonight. In glitzy Hong Kong, villagers at one of the city's last squatter settlements will soon bid farewell to a place they've called home for their entire lives. In Hong Kong, the last remaining squatter villages in Kowloon will be demolished by year's end. These informal settlements were once home to millions of refugees who fled China during the Civil War and in the 1940s.
In months, Law Yet Ping will bid farewell to a centuries-old village he has called home in Hong Kong for more than 7 decades.
我喺度出世㗎嘛。 我爸爸同媽媽就喺大陸落嚟噶嘛，咁咪喺呢度住，咁啊生到我咯，我差唔多第5個啦，我就有兩個細佬啊。
With 400 years of history, Cha Kwa Leng village is one of the last 3 remaining squatter settlements in Hong Kong. Located in the eastern part of Kowloon, the village is scheduled for demolition latest by early next year. It was former Chief Executive Carrie Lam who had suggested redeveloping 3 urban squatter areas, including Cha Kwa Leng village, to make way for public housing. The move also means one of Hong Kong's last remaining squatter villages will be erased.
嗰陣時好開心嘅，好多街坊街里行出行入傾偈啊咩，我哋以前成日燒嘢食啊，打邊爐啊。
Originally a settlement for Hakka people, Cha Kwa Leng saw an influx of mainland Chinese immigrants over the years, just like other squatter villages in the territory. Unable to afford housing, many people built wooden homes in squatter villages.
They want squatter housing, they want to live in the cheap places, so they build, and they found one of the way to circumvent the surveillance of the squatter control team is to build along the hillside, because these are the spots that were difficult to spot.
Over time, the colonial government developed high-rise public housing estates due to the overwhelming number of squatters requiring accommodation. And because squatter settlements also emerged around industrial areas, it provided a vital labor force for the factories in the vicinity, playing a significant role in Hong Kong's economical development.
Squatters is economically very important for Hong Kong in historical terms. People can earn a living during the colonial time, where the economy whenever went bad, they can still earn a living through that source. On the other hand, these kind of squatter factory also provide very important source of commodity production for Hong Kong to export.
Chak Wah Leung village has witnessed Hong Kong's evolution into a bustling city, and some long-time villagers have reservations about moving into one of the famous high-rise buildings of the territory.
樣樣都唔捨得㗎啦！你搬咗住喺呢度嗰個狗竇係咪先？你唔好理我，俾我咩都有個狗竇喺度我都 OK 㗎嘛。
都冇辦法㗎，係嘛？一定會散嘅，有聚有散，啲人生係咁㗎啦。
A small number of residents still living in Chak Wah Leung continue to wait for relocation, while others have moved on, leaving behind a lifetime of memories.
Well, a big night for the cast and crew of the historical epic Shogun at this year's Emmy Awards. The hit FX Samurai series taking home a record 18 trophies, including the prestigious Best Drama Award. Well, it is the first majority non-English series to win an Emmy in the category. South Korean Netflix hit Squid Game was nominated for Best Drama back in 2022, but lost to HBO's Succession. Shogun led the night with 25 nominations, making it the most nominated series of the year. Apart from winning the Best Drama Award, the show also took home the Best Actor and Actress in Drama trophies, making Hiroyuki Sanada and Anna Sawai the first Japanese actors ever to win an Emmy. Or director Frederick E. Otoy also won Outstanding Directing.
このことが次世代の俳優や制作陣に大きな意味をもたらしてくれると信じています。時代劇が継承され、そして日本初でも世界に通用するものを作っていくという一つの布石になればという気持ちです。
Shogun is a show about translation, not what is lost, but what is found when you do safety meetings in 2 languages and you learn not to walk on tatami mats with your utility boots.
Shogun is a remake of the 1980 NBC miniseries based on the novel by James Clavell. Set in 17th century Japan, it tells the story of an English sailor who ends up shipwrecked on a Japanese island. He gets involved in a pretty deadly political conflict. Unlike the 1980 miniseries, though, the new version is told in the eyes of the main Japanese characters, with most of the dialogue spoken in Japanese.
We control nothing beyond that.
I assure you it's a good one to watch. And on that note, we wrap up East Asia tonight. Don't forget your headlines anytime at cna.asia. Thanks for watching.